Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to be here, and that pleasure is on several fronts. At a personal level, my father was a Rotarian for over 30 years, and so I know from experience the work that the Rotary organisations from around the world do. I also know the fun that you have. I also know that there are fines. And I've got some money here just in case I fall foul during the next 15 minutes. And as some of you may even detect from the twang, it's probably going to be sooner rather than later, but given that I come from the other side of the ditch. Although I've been here 12 years and originally came from Melbourne, but about a year ago my wife and I were watching the Bledisloe Cup match, and we looked at each other and said, who are we barracking for? It got to the point where, well, for a variety of reasons, the Wallabies weren't exactly worth barracking for anyway. And secondly, coming from Melbourne, I couldn't spell the word rugby when I first came anyway. So I think having brought up three children in New Zealand, we love New Zealand. We've been here for 12 years, and so hopefully I'll be shown some allowances for the fact that I'm not just basically a fly-in, fly-out person from the other side of the ditch. Anyway, I thought over about 10 minutes I'd just give you a quick snapshot on ESR. For some of you, ESR is probably a well-kept secret, and so hopefully over about 10 to 15 minutes at the outside we can start to change that. Because my view is that ESR is one of the great organisations of New Zealand. And that's a big statement, I know, but hopefully I can just demonstrate a couple of snippets as to why. The reality is we are a Crown Research Institute, and we're very proud of that. The reality also is that we do what we believe is a lot of great work for New Zealand. We're divided, we tend to focus on 4 areas, of which 2 are probably the real emphasis. So we have 4 groups. We have a forensic science group. We have in essence, what we call an environmental health group that does a lot of infectious disease testing for New Zealand, and I'll touch on that shortly. We also have an environment group, which is really a water group, and also we're increasingly into food safety and security. And everything we do is underpinned, we believe, by good science. That's the platform that we need if we're going to undertake our role effectively. Quick organisational structure, and for some at the end of the room it might be a bit hard to see it, but in essence if you think of a coat hanger, we have 2 major groups. One is our forensic science group, and the other is basically our infectious disease group, and the knowledge that we have from infectious diseases enables us to also become increasingly involved in food safety, in water, and also since 2011 in radiation, which may surprise some, and if we have time I'll touch on that a bit later. Again, just really quickly, we have 4 operations around New Zealand. We're a group of about 450 people, of which about 320 have science qualifications. We have two operations in Wellington, head offices at Proliferation, and we also have a second site at Wallaceville. And then our main forensics group is based in Auckland, and our food and water and radiation group is based in Christchurch. We also, and I'm just, at the moment just sort of giving you a quick snapshot before we delve into a couple of what I think are interesting projects. We also have a range of national centres, and so our Wallaceville site in particular is co-located with the Ministry of Primary Industries Animal Health site. And so, as happened in 2009 when New Zealand needed an integrated response around a pandemic, we were very much at the forefront of that, and we worked very closely with NPI and their animal health expertise, because increasingly disease is often starting with animals and then transferring into humans. And so it's vital as a nation that we have the ability to actually respond to that. So we have, as said, the centre at Wallaceville. We also buy all of New Zealand's vaccines on behalf of the Ministry of Health, and we do that because of the knowledge that our scientists bring to A, the purchase, and then B, the management of vaccines. Vaccines are actually quite difficult to manage effectively. They can only be subjected to very small temperature variations, and so again we have an infrastructure and expertise that enables us to do that. On the forensic side, is probably dominated by the work that we do for the New Zealand Police. In essence, ESR does all, or probably 95% of the forensic work for New Zealand. And that's really divided into two areas. One is whenever there's a major crime, our scientists would be there and taking physical evidence. So in essence, we have a physical evidence group that is looking at clothing, it's looking at paint, it's looking at fibres, it's looking at, in essence, what went on within a crime scene. And then the second component is really what we do around DNA. And I'll just focus on DNA for a moment. The technology has got to the point with regards to fighting crime where DNA is now a critical component of that. And so New Zealand has had the second DNA data bank in the world. And in fact, a lot of experts would say that New Zealand has one of the best DNA data banks in the world now. We have basically 145,000 people have samples on that data bank, and as you'll see from the statistics on the screen, it enables crime to be solved far quicker than it ever was historically. Our expertise in this space is such that we have just developed a software package called STR-Mix, which in simple terms enables multiple strands of DNA to be broken down and analysed. And this software, it's the only software in the world that can do this. And so we're about to, so if we're looking for breaking news, using Chatham House rules, we're about to launch this globally, and in fact we've just sold a very early commercial version to the US Army. And we're getting a lot of interest out of the US in particular for this, because in essence what it does is it enables DNA analysis to be done quicker, and probably to a high, certainly a higher scientific level of accuracy. And so you know, New Zealand this is just one simple example of where New Zealand is leading the world. And in simple terms, again, it shows, and I won't go through them, but again, you know, DNA is used day in, day out by the police. And so Maureen McKinnell, for example, who was killed in 1987 in Arrowtown, suspects were all required to give DNA samples, and it was through one of those samples that ultimately somebody was convicted, and they were convicted in 2003. So these things can take years to unravel at times, but the importance of DNA cannot be underestimated as a key crime-fighting tool in this day and age. We also are heavily involved in drug intelligence. Our teams regularly go with the police. It's almost weekly now. They've discovered some clandestine drug laboratory, and we're out there with the police, looking to analyse those laboratories. Some of them are incredibly dangerous places. Just because of the nature of the chemicals, they can be very unstable, and it's not unknown for someone to be booby-trapped as well. So there's a real risk for our staff and also the police. The sad thing, though, is just the increasing proliferation of drugs, including the party drug scene. Some of our scientists who've been operating in this space, for the last 20 years, are really worried about just the rapid increases in the types of different drugs that we're seeing, and the lethal doses of certain chemicals that are now being combined, to the point where, as I say to my youngest daughter, who's 15, do not take, I don't quite say it in these terms, but in essence, just don't take anything, because you cannot guarantee that one little tablet won't kill you now. That's how bad it's getting. And so we are increasingly being run off our feet when it comes to the clandestine drug work that we do. On the other main part of the coat hanger is our infectious disease side. So in simple terms, what we do is we have 11 high-end science laboratories that day in, day out analyse samples from hospitals around the country, often just to confirm what they believe they've found. So we tend to, so we'll confirm a whole range of diseases, ranging from meningococcal or influenza, flu or whatever. And so we have about 120 scientists who are daily are doing that. And increasingly they're providing health intelligence back through the system. That's probably something that we're increasingly focusing on. In fact, one of our largest customers is the Ministry of Health, and at the end, in about 4 weeks' time, we will have a major announcement with regards to the ministry, where in essence we're setting up a strategic partnership arrangement with them. And in essence what that will mean is that one of the things that we'll do is be the chief science group for the ministry with regards to helping to analyse health issues within the country. And so that's quite an advance on historically what we've done with the ministry, but it just shows the level of expertise that we have, and also the need for increasing health initiatives given the cost and the demographics that the country's having to deal with. One of the things that our health group is doing, we do a lot of research. We bring in about $20 million a year in research, and one of the programs we have going now is with regards to identifying new viruses. And so we have a team that is looking to identify new viruses. And the reason we're doing that is some of these viruses can have real human health implications. And so this group's been going for 12 months, and already they have identified 20 new viruses unique to New Zealand. Now, it's not to say that all 20 will have a human health application, but it's a bit like gold panning. The reality is every once in a while you find a virus that could have a significant health implication. And so again, this is putting us at the forefront of some of the research activities globally. We also have a project which we call Shivers, which is really around Southern Hemisphere influenza identification and verification. That's not quite the true an acronym, but I'm sort of just giving you a shorthand version. In essence, this is one of the things that ESR has started to do in the last couple of years, is go out and find new research projects from around the world. And this is a project that is funded by an American government group called CDC, the Centre for Disease Centre. And in essence, they are using New zealand as an early warning system for flu outbreaks. The reality is, what we tend to get here, the US follows in their following winter. And so we are an early warning system for what the US is looking for, and that they are prepared to fund it. And the reason that New Zealand won it was because of the quality of our science and the quality of our public health information. The reality was, our group was up against international competition, and so it just reinforced the quality of some of the work that we are all doing. We're also into food safety, and again, this sort of comes off. This is sort of my second to last slide. This is our infectious disease knowledge is also increasingly enabling us to be involved in food safety. And so one of the things that we started doing a year ago was testing meat exports for the US. America in June 2012 changed their legislation around any meat that had E. coli on it. It was largely done for lactaceous reasons in America, but the reality now is that any meat that is discovered at the border by the Americans that has E. coli on it will be rejected. And so we've been testing for about a year, and touch wood, we haven't had any meat discovered with E. coli on it within the American border, unlike our Australian cousins. So that's one for New Zealand. So, in summary, that's just a quick snapshot of ESR, and that final shot is of our new Mount Albert forensic facility, which we opened 2 weeks ago. We spent $5 million on upgrading our key capabilities around Mount Albert, which is in Auckland. And one of the things we do, and we do a lot of, is looking at the ballistic properties of bullets, particularly at a crime scene. And we've opened, as part of the upgrade, we opened a whole new firearms testing facility, which you can sort of see in the background as one of our staff takes a pot shot at me. So that's, as said in summary, that's a snapshot of ESR, and very happy to take any questions if you so desire. Thank you. So the flu, and I'm not an infectious disease scientist, so I need to put that as a rider. But in reality, the profile of the influenza outbreak that we've had this year, the vaccine that you could say obtained from, say, April, May, was designed around that profile. Now, nothing's perfect, but certainly up until now, it's been quite a light year for flu anyway. So look, there's no absolute guarantee, but the vaccine appears to have worked pretty well this year, and there's a high probability, as I said earlier, that what we have here will translate into North America next year. It's a really interesting question, and I don't think there's any simple answer. If you let's go back a couple of steps. One of the big fears is really increasingly around the integrity of the food chain. And so some scientists would argue that one of the reasons why SARS or SARS-like viruses emanated, say, in China was because a lot of antibiotics are increasingly used in the food chain to feed animals, and also just what they're being fed. And there is a real concern around that. And so the ability of new viruses to mutate and as said earlier, cross animals into humans is something that most health professionals around the world are increasingly worried about. If you talk to somewhere like Sir Peter Gluckman, his very simple advice is it's not a question of when, if we get another pandemic, it's only a question of when. And so, as part of that process, there's a lot of work going on, and has been going on over the last couple of years, around how do we better prepare ourselves for a pandemic. And so there are exercises that are run. I think ESR in particular took a lot of knowledge out of what happened in 2009, when we did have a small pandemic. But it's something that's there, and it's not something that we can rest easily around. And also, probably as part of that process, the other issue increasingly is sort of antimicrobial resistance, or for want of a better term, the superbugs, which are increasing. In fact, if you read a recent parliamentary report to the Australian Senate, they believe that in the Australian context, Australia probably has about 7 years to get their act together with regards to trying to minimise superbugs, because the reality is most of the drug companies have not been putting money into new drugs to replace the current antibiotics. So there are, without being alarmist, but we do have to be really careful as a nation around some of these issues as we go into the next few years.
Last question, Russ.
Graham, your results are very important to decision making and human health, and the environment, and forensics, so you don't want to get it wrong. What sort of assurance systems do you have in behind your science to give us confidence that you've got it right?
That's a very good question. It's multi-level what we do. From a quality point of view, all our laboratories, whether it be forensic, human health, food, are all accredited to the highest international standards. And that's a very demanding process, and it probably adds 10 to 15% to our total cost base. So we get done, both of our major groups are accredited every 5 years at the highest level, but there's like an ongoing rolling program around that. So that's one component. The equipment that we buy, the people that we recruit. In fact, the human factor is the greatest defence that we have, and so we are recruiting top-class scientists from around the world as probably our single best defence mechanism. And then on top of that, it's the type of advice we give, say, to the Ministry of Health or the police, or as we've just done with the government's inquiry and, in essence, into the Fonterra situation, where we were asked to appear as, in essence, subject matter experts around how we felt the New Zealand food safety system could be improved. Because I think there's quite an interrelationship between the health system and food safety, and the health system generally, as does food safety. The basic systems in New Zealand are extremely good, and there's been lots of studies that reinforce that. And so the bar is set pretty high in New Zealand, but of course we can't be complacent. It's a bit like flying a jet. You have all these wonderful systems, but something can still go wrong, and so we can't let our guard down.
Thank you, Graham. Peter, would you like to give the vote of thanks?
That's a very good question. It's multi-level what we do. From a quality point of view, all our laboratories, whether it be forensic, human health, food, are all accredited to the highest international standards. And that's a very demanding process, and it probably adds 10 to 15% to our total cost base. So we get done, both of our major groups are accredited every 5 years at the highest level, but there's like an ongoing rolling program around that. So that's one component. The equipment that we buy, the people that we recruit. In fact, the human factor is the greatest defence that we have, and so we are recruiting top-class scientists from around the world as probably our single best defence mechanism. And then on top of that, it's the type of advice we give, say, to the Ministry of Health or the police, or as we've just done with the government's inquiry and, in essence, into the Fonterra situation, where we were asked to appear as, in essence, subject matter experts around how we felt the New Zealand food safety system could be improved. Because I think there's quite an interrelationship between the health system and food safety, and the health system generally, as does food safety. The basic systems in New Zealand are extremely good, and there's been lots of studies that reinforce that. And so the bar is set pretty high in New Zealand, but of course we can't be complacent. It's a bit like flying a jet. You have all these wonderful systems, but something can still go wrong, and so we can't let our guard down.